I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who's Mike Arauz. Michael's travelled from New York to be with us today. Mike Arauz is a founding member and acting president at August, a New York-based consulting firm that builds high-performing teams for the world's most meaningful missions. Previously, Mike was a partner at Undercurrent, where he worked with executive leaders of global companies to transform how organizations work and thrive in the 21st century, including GE, Pearson, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Before joining Undercurrent, Mike worked at digital agency Deep Focus and at Pompeii AD, the design firm behind the Vanguard retailers Anthropologie and Urban Outfitters. Mike is also a co-author of the responsive.org manifesto and a leading contributor to the global self-management and future of work movement. I'd like you to invite or welcome Mike to the stage.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hello, good morning. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Mike Arauz. I work at August. August is a consulting firm based in New York City, and we build high-performing teams and help organizations to unlock their collective capacity to make a meaningful dent in the world. I want to start with a little anecdote. So I used to work at this retail design and brand strategy firm. And when I was there, I was asked to be part of a team for one of our biggest projects yet. One of the big clothing retail brands in the US had asked us to do a major consumer research study. And it was a really exciting opportunity for us. And the brand, it's pretty typical. The brand had been around for a while, and their customers, their consumers, kind of grown up, changed, and started to kind of grow apart from the brand. So they wanted to figure out what was going on and what can they do to reconnect with their consumers. So myself and two other teammates, we traveled all over the country, and we spoke to hundreds and hundreds of consumers. We would just camp out in the doorway in these retail stores, just interview people as they came in, just talking to them about their lives, what was important to them, their relationship with the brand and the products. And it was a really incredible experience because we spoke to so many people, so many different people from all over the country, and we learned so much about what was going on with consumers, what was going on with the brand, what was going on in their industry. It was a really incredible project. And at the end came time for our big presentation, which, again, we were really excited about because we had all these really interesting ideas to share. And on top of that, it was the biggest project we had ever worked on, and we were going to be presenting directly to the CEO of the entire corporation and the president, the new president of this brand. Now, importantly, this new president of the brand, the new president had not hired us. We had been hired during an interim when they were finalizing their search for this new president. And the new president's first day on the job, in fact, was the day of our presentation. Now, some of you might have a sense of where this is going. I was a little naive at the time. I didn't know. But you can probably guess what happens next, which is that before we even walked in the door for this meeting, that new president had already made up their mind about what they wanted to do with the brand, right? And it didn't matter what we had to say. It didn't matter how insightful our findings were. It didn't matter what the hundreds of thousands of consumers that they had, thought or cared about or wanted. That president knew best, and they knew what they wanted to do. So they didn't listen to anything that we told them. And they ignored everything, and over the next year, the brand pretty much tanked, and less than 2 years later, that president had been fired. Now, I'm not trying to say that if they had just listened to everything we told them, everything would have worked out fine. That's not the case. I know things are more complicated than that. But I wanted to share this with you because I think what happened was indicative of this company's inability to share and process information that might be useful to them, their inability to learn and adapt to what was going on around them, and their inability to empower people already inside their organization to help them be successful. Their inability to process information, inability to learn, and their inability to empower people to help them be successful. Now, I work with some of the biggest companies in the world, helping these business leaders figure out how to unlock the potential in their organizations. And what I've seen over and over again is that most companies in the world today share these same weaknesses. And that, meanwhile, the companies who are thriving and successful in today's world that's defined by disruption and constant change, the companies who are successful are the ones who excel at these new behaviors. And that's what I'm going to talk about this morning, is what separates these companies that are thriving and having all the success in today's world from the companies who are struggling. What's the difference? And what can you do to change your company from one to the other? So I want to start by talking about some specific behaviors, some familiar behaviors that you might find in your company. So I want you to raise your hand if you've ever worked with somebody who fits this description. Have you ever worked with somebody who haggles over the precise wordings of communications, minutes, and resolutions? Hands up. Hold your hands up so they can see them. Yeah. All right. And next one more. Raise your hand if you've ever worked with somebody who refers back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempts to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. Raise your hand. All right. And one more. Raise your hand if you've ever worked with somebody who insists on doing everything through channels and never permits shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. Raise your hand. All right. Great. Well, congratulations. Your company is being sabotaged. So those things that I just read you, those are actual instructions from a CIA field operative manual from the 1950s instructing agents on how they can sabotage organizations from the inside out. Incredible, right? And yes, sadly, this is just another day at the office for most of us, right? And I'm willing to admit that I've been guilty of these behaviors myself, right? This is just the way things are for most people inside of most organizations. And this is the reality. For most people inside of most companies today, work doesn't work. The way that we're organized makes it harder for us to get our work done instead of easier. The way that we make decisions slows us down when it needs to be speeding us up. And the way that we communicate and collaborate with our teammates makes us feel like we'd be better off working by ourselves than working together. Work doesn't work. And if you feel this way, you're not alone. Recent Gallup study of employee engagement found that only 13% of employees globally are engaged at work, while 63% are not engaged. And a whopping 24% of employees globally are actively disengaged at work. So it's no accident that it feels like our companies are being sabotaged sometimes when 1 out of every 4 people is spending their day, thinking about how they can escape, right? And companies are finding it harder and harder to unlock that productivity. Over the past couple decades, productivity growth has started to plateau. It's approaching 0. And it's never been harder for companies to get a return on their invested assets. We keep putting more and more in and getting less and less out. And it's never been harder to compete and keep up, right? In the late 1950s, the average lifespan of a company on the S&P 500 was over 60 years. If you made it there, you'd have a nice long run of prosperity ahead of you. But today, that lifespan is just 15 years. And so most companies today are struggling to unlock that productivity, unlock that impact and value creation. And yet this recent study found that there is this small select group of frontier firms who have figured out how to unlock this exponential productivity growth as compared to most companies. So what's happening? What's going on? Well, we now live in a world that is defined by exponential change. Now, Moore's law, this exponential change is driven primarily, not exclusively, but primarily by technological innovation. Moore's law is the law that states that the amount of computing power you can squeeze onto a computer chip doubles approximately every 18 months, while the cost of it cuts in half. And that has been happening for the past approximately 50 years now, steadily. So this image that you see up here, this is a 5 megabyte hard drive. And if I had wanted to send you the file for this presentation today back then, I would have had to fill up a jumbo jet with these hard drives, right? So that's what exponential change looks like. And this breakthrough and everything that it has touched has completely transformed the world that we live in. A few quick examples. A 3D printer that used to cost $40,000 now costs just $100, 7 years later. Sensors that we have in almost everything that's manufactured these days used to cost $20,000, now cost just $79. 250x improvement in just 5 years. And DNA sequencing that used to cost over $10 million now costs just $1,000. 10,000x improvement in just 7 years. And it's never been easier for companies to grow and create immense value seemingly overnight. For the average company on the Fortune 500, it took 20 years to create $1 billion in market cap. But it took Google just 8 years, Facebook 5 years, Tesla just 4 years, Uber and WhatsApp just 2 years each, Snapchat 22 months, and Oculus Rift, the virtual reality headset company that was acquired by Facebook, just 14 months from launch to being worth over $1 billion. Incredible. And it's never been easier to bring a product to scale. It took the phone company 89 years to connect 150 million users. But it took Facebook just 8 years to connect 1 billion users. And it took Android just 5 years to connect 1 billion users. Airbnb is now has more listings than any hotel company in the world. And they're able to provide 100 times more listings per employee than the average in the hotel industry. And they don't own any real estate. It's a pretty disruptive business model, right? So the difference between all these companies who are reaping all the benefits of this new world and the average company out there is that these new companies, these successful companies, the way that they work is fundamentally different than how most organizations operate. Most organizations today are still using an outdated, obsolete operating model that was created over 100 years ago for a world that no longer exists. The image in the background here is an org chart from the New York Erie Railroad Company from the 1800s. And it looks almost identical to every org chart you've ever seen, right? No one has stopped to question and rethink how large, massive organizations operate. And this operating model had a good run. It was very useful, very productive for a long time. Back in the 1900s, this industrial era model was a great way to create immense value. Companies, by being really good at operating this way, could unlock immense value, could compete in their market, could really compete and be successful by organizing a group, working towards a collective purpose, usually one that is defined by profit. An organization could be successful by being really good at creating some proprietary methods and carefully protecting that IP, by scientifically breaking down work into discrete, repeatable tasks and executing reliably and efficiently at massive scale. And lastly, by coordinating the efforts of people across regions and functions through very strict hierarchies and clear lines of command, right? So this worked really well for a long time. And it worked really well in a world where it was possible and useful to try to predict the future. It worked really well when it was possible and useful to try to be certain about what was going to happen next. And this idea of organizing for certainty versus organizing for uncertainty, optimizing for certainty versus optimizing for uncertainty, this is at the heart of what separates companies that are thriving today from those that are struggling. All work that you can imagine lives somewhere along this spectrum, from the most routine tasks to the least routine tasks. From the stuff that we know how to do it, there's a right way to do it, to the stuff where the answers are completely unknown and complex. And so on this side, on the right here, you have tasks like boxing up widgets on an assembly line, But you also have things like basic accounting and drafting a standard legal document. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got big, exciting, world-changing things like curing cancer or inventing a self-driving car. But you also have things like figuring out the best new IT system to implement in a mid-sized corporation. So most organizations today are optimized for this end of the spectrum, especially big, successful Fortune 500 companies. That's how they've become so successful, by really, really knowing how to squeeze more and more value out of that end of the spectrum, right? But here's the thing. That's what computers are good at, right? Computers excel at the most routine, the most programmable tasks. And as artificial intelligence and robotics continues to advance, computers are eating tasks along the spectrum from that side to the other. And a recent McKinsey study actually just found that 45% of the work that we do today can already be automated by existing computer technologies today. 45%. And so companies who excel at squeezing more value out of that end of the spectrum, they're out of answers, because computers are providing that extra value at that end of the spectrum. And computers are providing exponentially more value at that end, and that benefit that computers provide is very quickly available and accessible equally to all companies. So you can't unlock any unique value at that end. Now, the good news is that humans are especially good at stuff on the other end of the spectrum. This is where humans excel, in the most complex, most creative, most collaborative work. That's what humans are good at, and we're much better at that kind of stuff than computers are. And this is where the world-changing happens. This is where the big, exciting stuff happens. This is where organizations can unlock massive impact, massive value creation in the world. But sadly, most organizations that people work inside of, that human beings work inside of, are optimized for this end of the spectrum. So that's the difference. If you want to optimize for uncertainty, the way that you work, the way that you operate, looks very different. So companies that are succeeding and thriving in this uncertain environment, they also are organized around a collective purpose. But that purpose, unlike the industrial era, is about something that's beyond the bottom line. It's about something that invites people both inside and outside your organization to be part of some meaningful impact in the world. And organizing around that collective purpose, organizations can be successful by making it as easy as possible for people to access and share information that might be useful, as easy as possible to learn and adapt to the environment around you, and as easy as possible to enable people, to empower people, regardless of who they are or where they are in relation to your organization, to contribute to the organization's purpose. And we call these companies that operate in this way responsive organizations, because they are better equipped to sense and respond to new opportunities, to new challenges, to changes in the world around them. We're not the only ones who have identified this. These new practices go by many labels, some of which you've probably heard before: Agile, Lean Startup, the B Corp, Holacracy, exponential organizations, reinventing organizations, the fifth discipline. These are all related practices, and there's a lot of overlapping behaviors across all of these. And they're all part of a much bigger, broader shift in the way we work today. And I believe that this is actually the beginning of a revolution in the way that we work. I believe that it's going to be a revolution because people are going to insist that the organizations that they work in have to change. And I believe that the companies that embrace this shift are going to thrive and succeed, and the companies that resist it or ignore it are going to die. Now, the good news for you is that it is possible to make this change. It's possible to become a responsive organization. And something that we believe very strongly at August is that it is possible for organizations, even big old organizations, to change from one to the other. And it's still early days in this. We haven't figured out all the answers about how best to make that change. But we have already started to identify some very specific practices that organizations can do and adopt to help them become more responsive. And that's what I'm going to share with you now. So let's start with purpose. So purpose is the essence of all of this. Purpose is your organization's reason for being, your collective reason for being, your collective why. And it's about inviting people, whoever they may be, inside and outside your organization, to be part of some kind of meaningful impact in the world. At August, our stated purpose is a capable team for every meaningful mission. And this isn't perfect, and that's a point that I want to emphasize here. Your purpose doesn't have to be perfect, it has to be useful. It has to be useful, right? And so this is useful to us in a lot of ways. First of all, it inspires us. It gets us out of bed in the morning, but it also inspires learning and exploration. So a capable team. What makes a team capable? We don't know. We're trying to figure that out. And we can get up, it gets us out of bed every morning, and gives us something to go and investigate and figure out. It's exciting to us, it's motivating to us. And the same thing with what makes missions meaningful. Do we find that at the individual level, at the team level, at the organizational level? Does it need to have a social impact component to it? These are great questions. We don't have the answers yet, but we believe that we can create immense value for the world by trying to figure out the answers to these questions. And at the same time, rally a really awesome community of people, both outside and inside our organization, to help us figure it out. Tesla's stated mission is to accelerate the advent of sustainable transportation. Every time Elon Musk gets on stage to talk about a new product and new thing that they're introducing, he starts by reminding everybody that this is Tesla's mission. And this mission has been out there in public almost since the company started. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise to people when they do things like get into the battery business, for instance. Because batteries and efficient power storage is a crucial component in building a sustainable transportation system. And it shouldn't come as a surprise to people when Tesla opens up their patents and invites other car manufacturers to copy their designs for how electric vehicles recharge, because that helps to accelerate the advent of sustainable transportation. Patagonia's stated purpose: build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use the business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. A little bit wordy, perhaps, but again, it's not so much what you say, it's about what you do and how the company uses the purpose. Last year on Black Friday, huge shopping day in the US, Patagonia celebrated Black Friday with a letter from their CEO to their customers, inviting their customers to become radical environmentalists and go and repair your clothes instead of buying new clothes. Patagonia trains their retail employees to repair clothing, and they provide thousands of guides online for consumers to repair their clothes themselves. Microsoft. So Microsoft, when they started, had this purpose: a computer on every desk. Beautifully simple, powerful, inspiring purpose. And it lasted them a really long time. It was, extremely successful. And then they did it, which is also really, really astounding. They didn't necessarily do it all by themselves, but they certainly played a huge role in that. And then last year, when Satya Nadella, their new CEO, took over, I guess this was the year before, he introduced this new mission for the company: empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And again, not as elegant as a computer on every desk, but I would argue that if you look at what Microsoft has accomplished since Nadella took over, how much impact they've made and how they've been able to change as an organization, that this mission is really serving them well. And it comes through in things like very quickly rolling out a new version of the Office suite to work on Apple devices, on iPads and iPhones, right? That's the kind of thing that would have seemed heretical under the former CEO, Steve Ballmer, and then they embrace it very quickly because it serves this mission. So again, it's about how useful it is to your organization. So one way for you to get started: gather your leadership team, sit down and make your organization's purpose explicit. And when you do that, try to follow these guidelines. Make it user, customer-centric, expressing the impact you want to make for those that you serve. Make it brief, 100. Make it jargon-free and easily understood. And lastly, make it ambitious and inspiring the team to do their best. And by the way, all these slides and everything will be available online. They already are available online, but you can make sure that everyone has access to it afterwards. Second of all, so open. So openness is about making it as easy as possible for people to access and share information. In a world where we have as much data as we have today, it's actually counterproductive to try to have some person or some central function try to predict who this information is going to be most useful to and act as traffic cop. And instead, what responsive organizations do is that whenever possible, they default to open and make the information as accessible, as easily accessible to as many people as possible. So one of the ways that we do this at August, we actually have a public Google Drive. It's linked to from the main navigation on our website. People can actually go there right now, public.aug.co. And there we share as much information as we can about our company and what we do. So you can find things like our revenue and profitability. You can find things like our equity, who owns what in the company, our salaries and compensation. You can find all of our marketing plans, all of the IP about how we do what we do. Everything, as much as possible that we can share, we put up there. Even things as we're creating them will be created there. The only thing that we don't put there is our client's own proprietary information, but everything else goes in that public folder. And Percolate. So Percolate is a marketing software startup in New York. One of the really cool things that they do is that they create an in-house knowledge exchange platform called Barista. And what it does is that it routes questions coming in from anyone in the organization to someone else in the organization who can answer those. So if a salesperson is out in the field and they're trying to, a question comes up from a customer, they can route that back very quickly into the system, usually get an answer back within minutes. And this becomes a knowledge database over time. Right? So every week they gather up all the questions and answers, send out an email to the whole team. Here are the new questions and answers available to you. And this becomes basically an in-house Wikipedia. And as new people join the organization, they're able to go here and find almost any answer to almost any question that they can think of. Zara. So Zara, a great example in the fashion industry. One of the really neat things that they do is when customers return things to the store, someone is there to ask them about why they're returning those items to the store. And they collect that information, they put it into a centralized database. All those answers get funneled back to the designers. The designers have access to all that information about why people are returning things and what people are returning. And then those designers are empowered to turn whatever trends that they're seeing into new products that end up on racks in a matter of weeks. And this has been very successful for Zara. They have a 70% turnover rate in their inventory every 2 months and average 17 customer visits per year compared to an industry average of just 3. So, what can you do? We like to think of this kind of working internally as working in public. And there's some really, really simple, easy to access software tools that any organization can use to start working in this new way. So first off, cloud-based document sharing, document collaboration tools. Microsoft OneDrive, Box, Google Docs, those are all good examples. Collaborative project management tools. This is just things that make who is working on what on a project accessible, transparent to everyone on the team and even people outside the team. And some of those tools include Trello, Asana, Basecamp. These are all software tools that you can just go and sign up for, start using right away. And lastly, chat applications like Slack and HipChat, which I promise you can actually eliminate all internal email. Imagine what your life would be like if you had 0 internal email. It's possible. These tools are waiting for you. Go and try them out. So number 3, learning. So we've got purpose, open, learning. So learning is about what do you do with all this information? How can you turn that information that you're getting into continuous improvement? What responsive organizations do is they have lots of processes and systems that make sure that everybody is constantly pausing and reflecting on what's working and what's not, and making adjustments as necessary. So one of the ways that we do this at August is that we run our consulting business as if it's an agile software product. All of our projects are broken down into 4-week cycles. So we have this built-in checkpoint with us and the client to say, how are things going? What needs to change? Because I don't know if you've worked with consultants before, but if you're working on, a 6-month or a 12-month project, how often is it that the scope needs to change, or you need to adjust course, right? Always. Things always change. So we have this built-in mechanism to make sure that we're making those changes as we go. And then within that 4-week cycle, every project team works in 1-week sprints. So every Monday, the team gets together, reprioritizes what needs to get done, and then ships an iteration of their work every Friday. So there isn't some grand reveal where we disappear in a cave for 12 weeks and then come back with this beautiful PowerPoint deck. We're creating it collaboratively and iteratively with the client every week. So Amazon is a fantastic example in many respects here. One of the neat things that they've done is that they've created a platform called Web Lab that allows any developer or product owner inside of Amazon to deploy live experiments on the actual Amazon.com with real customers. And they run over 2,000 of these experiments a year, and they've led to really interesting, really successful new features and services on the site. So in 2013, for example, they created this really cool new service called Ask an Owner. So if a customer is shopping and they have a question about a product that they're considering, they can ask a question, and that question is routed automatically to another customer who has already purchased the item. And within months of launching this, they already had millions of questions and answers completed. Chipotle. So Chipotle is a really popular burrito fast food chain in the US. Just last week, they shut down all of their stores in the US for an entire day, 1,900 stores. And it was because they were dealing with a food safety crisis that was threatening to do some lasting damage to their brand. And the reason why I emphasize them, obviously, they had some serious issues to deal with, but how quickly they responded to that issue that they had to deal with, and their willingness to shut down all of the stores for an entire day, and their willingness to do that quickly, retrain the entire staff, and do a live Q&A with their CEO virtually through all those stores that day, I think says a lot about how important it is to them to continually learn and improve how they operate. So what are some things that you can do to get started? Really, really simple but powerful thing for you to do. The next time you get together with a teammate, with any team, to reflect on how something went, how a meeting went, how some plan that you put together went, how did it go? Use these questions to structure the conversation that you have with your teammates. What worked? Where did we get stuck? And what might we do differently next time? Incredibly simple, but I promise you, the first time that I tried this, I was astounded by what a difference it makes in the quality of the conversation, quality of the learning that you get out of your team. And once you do this a couple times, it's going to creep into the way that you work, and you're going to want to bring it out all the time in all kinds of different contexts. So lastly, network. So network is about empowering people inside and outside your organization, whoever they may be, wherever they are, to contribute to your collective success. And what responsive organizations do is they figure out ways to break down those barriers, break down the limitations of hierarchy, the limitations of functional and regional silos, even barriers around culture or societal expectations, anything that gets in the way of somebody helping you and contributing to your purpose. One of the ways that we do this at August is we have an open compensation system. Everybody in our company knows how much each other makes. And most importantly, everyone is empowered to have a say in making sure that their own compensation is fair and that collectively the entire system is fair for everyone. And then on top of this, we've made this system public. We've shared it with the world and invited other companies, some of which have already picked it up, used it as inspiration or a reference point for their own compensation system, iterated on it, published their version that now we're able to learn from and incorporate back into how we're doing things. So that network is helping us learn and improve faster than we would be able to all by ourselves. One of the projects that I'm most proud of in my career is a project that I worked on with GE. And GE was seeing how digital fabrication technology is changing how hardware engineering works, and how hardware engineering is becoming more like software engineering, more collaborative, and working in a more networked model. They wanted to explore that and see how it might be valuable for GE. So we introduced GE to this incredible open online engineering community called GrabCAD. And we went to some product designers at GE. We got the specs for a part, a bracket that goes inside of a GE jet engine. We took those specifications to the GrabCAD community. We challenged them to see if they could come up with a better design for the part. And in just a month, we got over 700 responses, which is orders of magnitude more responses than GE would normally be able to get using their own internal processes. And the winner had an 80% weight reduction in the part, which translates to over $20 million in annual fuel saving costs for GE's aviation customers. And the best part of all was the person who won this contest was a 20-year-old kid from Indonesia who had never done any kind of aviation engineering before in his life. And he works at GE now. Peter Aceto is the CEO of Tangerine Bank in Canada. Just last year, he actually came out with a book advocating these new ways of working. And Tangerine Bank gives a huge amount of autonomy and trust to their retail locations and eliminates a lot of the bureaucracy that normally exists between that retail branch level and the corporation. And as a result, they're seeing exponential returns on it. So they're able to serve 1,800 customers per employee compared to an industry average of just 250. And they're able to provide over $40,000 handle over $40,000 in deposits per employee compared to an industry average of just $10,000. So it's amazing what happens when you empower people, when you trust people to contribute and be part of what you're building. One way for you to get started, apply this network thinking at a team level. So a project that you've already got going or a project you're about to launch, apply these rules to how that team operates, how that team is designed. First, lean, make them 7 plus or minus 2 people, no more than that. If you want to go even lower, that's even better, 5 people or less. Make it multidisciplinary, making sure that they have the right mix of skills that they need to get whatever it is done that they need to get done. So for instance, if legal needs to be involved, then someone from legal should be part of the team, part of the working team. Clear timelines with a specific goal that's testable within 3 months or less. Again, if you want to go even shorter, that's even better. Self-organizing, they decide for themselves who does what and how they get things done. And lastly, independent. Make sure that they have permission and the authority to ship without any external approvals. So those are the specific examples. This is a new way of working. The way that most people inside of most organizations operate, work doesn't work. But it can. It's possible for things to change, and it's about embracing uncertainty and embracing this new operating model that starts with a purpose beyond the bottom line, and your success will depend on your ability to make it easy for people to access and share information, making it easy for the organization to learn and adapt continuously, and lastly, your ability to empower people to help you be successful. So thank you very much. I invite you to be part of this revolution. And if anybody, we'll take some questions right now, but also feel free to get in touch. My email is mike@og.co. And if you want more of this kind of thinking, sign up for our weekly email newsletter. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. And while you're thinking of your questions, Mike gave us a great summary, by the way, but I'll just summarize what I took out of that. We started with a company president who thought he knew best. We talked about organizations' inability to learn. We talked about work doesn't work, and that great example of the CIA manual, which kind of demonstrates that we're all subverting our own ability to innovate with our businesses. We talked about how if you look at the average, productivity's down, ROI's down, life expectancy of a company's down. But on the other side of the coin, there are frontier firms out there who are growing faster than ever, who are creating value faster than ever. And we heard about some examples, particularly Airbnb, and we're going to hear from some of those collaborative models today. So the industrial era business models that we're all working in are not working because they organize for certainty rather than the uncertain environment we live in today. And when Mike put that model up of the old style organization, which purpose was to make profit, was closed, was controlled, and was focused on efficiency, I thought, yeah, I've worked there a couple of times. Did you think that? Certainly in retail organizations, when I started, that's what it was all about. Control, not telling anybody a thing unless they needed to know, and focusing on the roster, on efficiency, on every cent in your buying program. Then we looked at the new organization that focuses on purposes other than profit, that's open, it's easy as possible to access information and share information, it's empowered, it's based on open communities, and it's learning. So that's what I took out of that, Mike. Do we have any questions from the floor for Mike? We have one here. If we can get a mic down here, please. If you could just introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, it's Jenny Williamson from Grant Thornton. It's a great presentation, thank you. When you were talking about Tangerine and that example, from a brand perspective, how do you allow that decision making to happen at that front level, but still keep the consistency of the brand, which is what brings your customers in?
Right. I think the companies that have a good mix of this, we're actually, John, who's coming up next, we were talking about Apple retail, for instance. There are a lot of companies out there that succeed at both empowering people at the edges of the organization and have a really strong and clear brand. I think the clarity of the brand in the first place is a really important starting point, and then providing really clear guidelines to people. Those guidelines, that communication about what's expected, builds that trust. And you can say, as long as you work within these boundaries, you can do whatever you want. But the boundaries are clear, and you know what's in and out.
We've got time for one more.
Down here?
Yeah.
She's just going to bring you a mic.
Mike, what advice would you offer uniquely to retail, where something like 70% of the workforce today may not even have a voice in the organization, is not connected to the network, to start to get the momentum? I've heard challenges from my customers, I'm Marcy from Microsoft, just around making that initial investment, getting senior leadership on board to be able to really tap into this new way of working.
Well, it really starts with this mindset shift, right? So if you're really optimizing for efficiency, if you're trying to squeeze more profitability out of the stores, then of course it drives this mindset where you care less about employee turnover, you care less about employee engagement, and like what John was telling me this morning, you just kind of spin into this downward cycle. So you have to start with this mindset shift that we're optimizing for uncertainty, for an uncertain environment, and we need to empower people to figure out and solve problems out in the field and make sure that whatever they are figuring out, whatever solutions they're coming up with, because your retail people, they're the ones who talk to your customers every day, right? They have the best sense of what's going on in the world around you. So that's an incredible asset. But you have to build tools and processes to process that information, to make sure that they can share it back into the organization, that the organization is ready to listen to it and do something about it.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There'll be a chance to speak to Mike in the breaks. So we're having a break after the next presentation, then we've got lunch. Mike will be around, So if you've got any more questions, feel free to interact with Mike. Thanks a lot again,
Thank
Mike.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker in this session is